Lakeland Public Television's Common Ground is brought to you by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund.
Hello, I'm Candyce Westfield, and today I'm going to show you how to work with a product called PMC. It's precious metal clay. And I'm going to incorporate a beach stone in this piece I'm making because a lot of my work involves beach stones. So precious metal clay was invented by Mitsubishi Corporation about 12 years ago, and it was made for jewelers as a way to create texture and three-dimensional things without having to cast, which is a much more labor-intensive process. This is what it looks like. It comes in a lump form, and you need to put a little bit of lubricant on your hands so it doesn't stick to your fingers. Tear off a piece. Condition it a little bit. You got to think about that it's going to shrink a little bit. When I decide on the size, I have to think about it, make it a little bigger than I want the end product to be to compensate for that shrinkage. And then I have these texture plates that I've made. These are made from a two-part compound that you mix together, and then you can press things into it to get a texture. And I've made my own textures out of plants that I've collected, which is kind of my thing. Most of my work has some natural element to it. And then I will put it into one of the textures. I kind of like working with the clay like this because after it's fired, my fingerprints are actually in the back of it, which I kind of feel like is the ultimate mark of the artist. It's about the size I want it to be. Now I got to be thinking about that it's going to shrink a little bit. And then I'm going to put the other texture on there and just smush them together to get the texture on both sides of the piece. And try not to move around too much. Yeah, that's pretty good. So now I'm going to cut out the center of that. I'm going to do it while it's on this texture plate so I don't wreck the texture in the back. Okay, so then now I've got this piece that's got a texture on both sides. Then I need to add one more thing to this, and then we'll let it dry. Okay, I'm going to put a hole in it right here so I'm going to wrap the wire through. Okay, then the next step is to get this to dry, which I put it on this little drying tray. And that'll only take about 5 minutes. In the meantime, I'm going to make a pair of earrings to match that. It's a little trickier because I have to have two pieces that are approximately the same size and shape. And these I'm only going to texture on one side because you don't flip your earrings around anyway. I worked for the Forest Service for almost 20 years. That was my first career. And then in 1999, I quit. Cut little holes out of these. Went back to school, and in 2002 I started doing jewelry full-time after getting an art degree. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do in school. I just wanted to do art, and then I took a jewelry class and fell in love with it. And then I'm just going to use this pin tool to put a couple holes in these. And then I will stick those on the dryer. Okay, to sand the clay, all you need is your basic emery file, which is really cool. And I'm just going to go around and take all the little rough edges off and make it smooth. And the more finishing I can do at this stage, when it's really easy, the better. Get that till I like the feel of it, and then all this dust that I'm creating, I will scrape up and save because it's all silver in there. Okay, then that piece is ready to go into the kiln, get fired. For 2 hours, that's just the way you get the strongest product in the end, and all the binder burns off and you end up with fine silver. So this is a little kiln I use when I'm just doing a couple pieces, but if I was doing a whole big batch, I'd use a bigger kiln that I have out in the garage. Okay, so when it comes out of the kiln, it's got this kind of a whitish cast to it. that's because it has all these little microscopic bumps. And so the next step is to burnish it and get it, smooth those out. And that'll look like shiny metal. Okay. So to burnish this, you just use a brass brush and a little water, and then I get a little soap on there, act as a lubricant, and then you just, I guess the natural world is probably my biggest influence in my work. Textures of nature, and I use a lot of leaves and feathers and rocks. I just find those elements are more beautiful than diamonds and fancy stones. So now it's ready to assemble. I just think that what nature has done to it is fascinating, you know, to pick up a smooth stone that looks almost polished and it's just been tumbled around in the lake, you know, that, or it has an interesting little spot in it or a line, or I just think it's beautiful and interesting and more of a treasure than a diamond to me. Okay. The next thing I need to do is I'm going to put a stone hanging in the middle of this piece, so I need to pick one that fits. I want one that's not too big and not too little, so I think I like that black one. So I need to drill a little hole in that stone so I can run a wire through it. Okay, to drill the stone, you need to have it in water so it and the bit don't get too hot. I pick up stones everywhere I go. Actually, I did that before I started using them in jewelry, so it was kind of a natural progression to start to do something with all of them. I make textures out of leaves and grass and things in nature, my texture plates that I use for clay. I'm always paying attention to textures in nature and trying to replicate those in my work. Okay, there's a hole in there. All right, so now I have all the parts that I need to put this together and make it into a necklace. I think it's the process that I enjoy the most. I mean, I certainly like the end result, but I love tools and I love figuring things out, the problem solving, to have an idea and then figure out how can I make that into something. That's the part that gets me excited. And then to end up with something beautiful after I've experimented and made it, you know, that it actually turns out, that's really fun. I got a nice little dangle in there. Okay, so the next step now is to take these and dip them in liver of sulfur to give them a patina, which they could be done at this point. You put them on a chain, but I kind of like doing the patina because it brings out the texture a little more. So this is liver of sulfur. Normally I'd have this going all day, but it stinks like eggs, rotten eggs, so I spared you that till the end here. I just put it in warm water, which works better than cold. And then I drop my pieces in there. And you can, depending on what color you want, you can take them out right away and you get kind of a blue, which I like. That side I don't like though. The longer it's in, the darker it gets. I think my work is very organic. And then you rinse them in water. I describe my work as, I like simple lines, clean lines, textures. Just dry them off a little bit, and then I'm going to buff them a little to bring back some of the highlights of the metal. It's kind of jewelry that you could wear every day of the week, or it can be fancy enough to wear dressed up in a little black dress, I think. Just depends on your style. I'm really lucky to get to do what I do. I really feel fortunate to be able to do this. I feel like it's my passion. And not everybody gets to do that. And if I buff it too much, or take too much color off, I can just put it back in the liver of sulfur and start over. I'll do commission work. I sell online on Etsy, and then I have about 14 stores I sell to, either consignment or wholesale. It's kind of a collaboration a lot of times. People will bring me a stone that they've picked up somewhere that means something to them, you know, a trip they went on or their granddaughter gave it to them or something, and then they want it made into a piece of jewelry, so that's kind of fun.
If you enjoyed this segment of Lakeland Public Television's Common Ground, consider making a contribution at lptv.org. If you have segment ideas pertaining to North Central Minnesota, contact us at legacy@lptv.org. Common Ground is funded by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund by the vote of the people on November 4th, 2008.